Growing up like David Ige did in a working-class family, this is personal for him. David has a deeply genuine commitment to helping Hawaii families. As a father of three, David Ige is fighting to create opportunities that keep our children here. David is in this for the right reasons. I'm Dan Akaka, and I'm voting for David Ige.
Growing up with a steelworker father, a mother who was a nurse, and 5 brothers trying to make ends meet teaches you a lot about hard work and compromise. Graduating from the University of Hawaii, 35 years in the private sector, 3 decades in the House and Senate show commitment and dedication. Raising 3 children together teaches patience and love. These are qualities of a governor Hawaii can be proud of. Please vote for my husband, David Ige.
Hawaii, you have a choice. The same politicians who put special interests ahead of you or someone you can trust.
I'm David Ige. As governor, I'll work to provide true affordable housing for Hawaii's residents, expand our economy by supporting innovation and making strategic investments in the tourism industry as well as the military. I will put money directly into our schools and will protect our kupuna. I'll work hard for you, and I humbly ask for your vote. As a father, you're always trying to give your children the best opportunity. But the fear as a parent is that they'll leave and never come back. Hawaii has everything that we need. What we lack is belief that it can be done.
David Ige, fighting for small business tax credits and high-tech education.
It's about being willing to not care who gets credit, to really be focused on doing good rather than looking good.
Democrat David Ige for governor, for the right reasons.
Aloha and welcome to David Ige 2.0, a live statewide conversation with gubernatorial candidate David Ige. I'm your host, Chenoa Farnsworth. I'm really excited to be a part of this unique event today. This will give you, the people, a chance to interact, rate, and ask questions of David. We will be using an interactive software program called LiveSift that will allow you to track your feedback. If you haven't already done so, please log on to www.livesift.com. You don't need to download anything to use this website. You can just go on. If you're watching on your computer or at a live event, please use your smartphone, or you can open a second window in your computer. And again, go to livesift.com website, enter the participant code David Ige Live, all one word. Once you've logged on, it will ask you a couple of quick demographic questions. Several of you have already been participating in the lead up to us going live, so we can take a look right now and see who has tuned into the show. Okay, first we have a look at our gender mix. 61% male. What? Okay. And how many people are at your location? We're looking at that as well. Looks like most of you are in relatively small groups out there, either watching on your own or at some live events. So that's interesting. We have a couple of folks that are in groups of 10 or more. So that's cool. And then I think we're going to look also at demographics in terms of where you are located. Oh, okay. There's the map, and we can see a lot of Oahu and Big Island and Kauai and Maui. Really nice spread across the islands. A lot of participation from the neighbor islands, which is really great to see. Okay. Next, when you're on the LiveSift program, you'll see a comment box, and that's where you would enter your question for David. Okay, so several of you have already been asking questions, but if you haven't already, please ask your questions now. The question has to be 140 characters or less, and don't forget to click the send button or we won't get it. Keep in mind that we have a lot of questions coming in and not all of them will be able to get answered on the air. We already have about 30 questions, so I'm sure that we won't be able to answer them all. Okay. In the meantime, we're going to watch a short video and give you a chance to participate on the LiveSift program and ask your questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I still get nervous before the debates. I still have to think about it.
What are you,
Right.
crazy?
Well, and you know, for me, I'm an engineer, so
Yeah.
I think the other part of the challenge is that I need to be accurate. I cannot make things up. I don't feel comfortable making things up.
Oh, there's your problem.
Yeah, I know. So I can't fake it. You know,
Yeah.
somebody asks me a question, I need to answer, and I need to answer correctly because I won't make it up.
All right. Welcome back. Before I introduce David Ige, let's do a quick recap. In case you're just tuning in, if you'd like to participate in the live interactive discussion, you'll need to log on to livesift.com and enter the participant code David Ige Live, all one word, and then follow the instructions on your screen. Thanks to all of you who have already logged on. We've got a lot of participation already. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Senator David Ige, our candidate for governor. Aloha, David.
Aloha. Thanks, Chenoa. Thank you for agreeing to host this. It's a great opportunity.
Great. David, would you like to say anything to the folks who have just tuned in and by way of an opener today?
As you know, the first event we had was about 2 weeks ago, and I do know that we had more than 100 participants. I forget exactly what the number was.
I think it was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, this is kind of a new exploration of ways to connect with people. So I'm excited. It was an interesting an hour last time, and I think that we're looking forward to many, many more questions today.
Okay, great. Well, I'm really excited about this event today because it's using the LiveSift technology, which was developed right here in Hawaii at Blue Startups as one of our accelerator companies. So before I give David our first question, again, reminding you that we're using LiveSift, and you can also rate David's answers in real time using the LiveSift polling. So that's very brave of you, David. Okay, let's start with the first question, which is, okay, hold on just 1 second. It's not on my screen. Does anybody have the question? Okay. All right. As governor, will you oppose taxes on state pensions? Yes or no?
Yes, I will oppose taxes. I know that there'll be lots of misinformation that will be inundating the voters all across the state in the next 9 days as people try to distort the facts on that. I was the one that opposed the taxing of pensions 4 years ago, and I definitely, as chairman of Ways and Means, I have been involved with balancing the budget over the last 4 years, and so I'm very familiar with the opportunities and challenges, and clearly there are many challenges that will have to be addressed by whoever is elected governor. And so I certainly will not be proposing any tax on pensions.
Okay, well, there you have it. Well, we'll hold you to that. Okay, so now's your chance to respond and log in and rate David's answer. Like I said, this is a very brave move of any politician to be rated in real time. Looks like a favorable answer, so that's great. And I think that we will move on to our next question, but it looks like the majority of folks agree with you. Some undecided, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I did know when it comes up in coffee hours, people are saying there are some who believe that we should tax pensions, although the large majority just believe that it's not appropriate, especially for people who work for a long time to earn the pension and are on fixed incomes and are challenged about meeting the cost of living here in Hawaii.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I think we're going to move to our next question, which is, okay, just give us a second here. Okay, so the next question. In the event that you become the next governor for the state of Hawaii, will you allow Lieutenant Governor Shan Tsutsui to have a satellite office on Maui?
Yes. The whole question came up this past session or actually 2 years ago when Shan was first appointed as Lieutenant Governor. It was the first time that we actually had someone who was not a resident of Oahu be Lieutenant Governor. And that's really, I guess, a question, do we believe that the Lieutenant Governor, we ought to allow someone who is a resident of a neighbor island be Lieutenant Governor? So, when we had the bills in hearing, we actually did pass it to allow for someone who is a resident of neighbor island to be Lieutenant Governor. And I thought the testimony that we had at the time of the hearing was positive, that it should be a possibility, especially for the neighbor island residents, having that as an option. So, clearly that's something that we would be continuing if we are successful on November 4th.
Great. Well, let's see what people thought about that. Oh, interesting. A little more mixed results.
Yes.
What do you think is the counter argument here? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, what people have said was that if you're elected to the Lieutenant Governor, you ought to make the commitment and move to Honolulu. So I think that's I guess the choice is. I do think that there is value in having a Lieutenant Governor who is from the neighbor islands. As we've gone campaigning around the state, the issues are very different, and it just provides a real perspective as someone who is a resident on neighbor islands.
Right. Okay. Great. So the next question, will you be doing these live town hall meetings when you become governor? And using LiveSIF?
Well, you know, it's one of those, I really do believe in transparency and providing access to government. So, you know, whatever the mechanism that makes the most sense in terms of providing access to the people, we would pursue. Now, we wouldn't have so many people involved with trying to stage it. So I guess the challenge is how are the people here at LiveSIF willing to volunteer to provide that opportunity?
I'm sure they would. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I know they've been involved in other town halls, so yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
Sure. I think if we can make the arrangements to have it work out, we definitely would be interested in trying to continue that.
All right. And I'm not sure what people thought of that answer, but we'll just move on to the next question. Okay. Will you support the super ferry? Oh boy.
So, you know, if I am elected governor, I would support any company that wants to provide service to our community. So it really is about understanding what the needs are. I would definitely assure that all of the laws and all of the studies that are required are completed. So they would have to make sure that they do the environmental impact statements. There would be a requirement for them to engage the communities and in public hearings and all of those. So assuming that the company gets through that, then as governor, I would work with the company to make provisions in the harbor so that they could operate. So, you know, it is a significant investment. I haven't heard of anybody specifically or any company specifically who is in the process of raising capital and doing all those things that's required to start the business. But clearly, if someone was interested in restarting the super ferry, I would be supportive. You know, the question came up in forums before, would I be willing to put state money into the project? And that's where I would probably draw the line. You know, I don't know if it would, my assessment is that it would be a very expensive undertaking, and clearly I don't believe that the state has the capacity to undertake a project like that at this time.
Okay, well, taking a look at our results, it looks like most people agree with you there.
Although that's another one that's very split.
And it is, but it looks like your constituents at least are pretty well aligned on this issue. But yes, it is a divisive issue in the state for sure. Okay, let's look at our next question. What is your position on Amendment 2 regarding the all ag enterprises, farming, ranching, aquaculture, etc., to access special purpose revenue bonds?
Okay, so maybe just kind of a short primer on what the question is. It really, as you know, the state can issue or support private companies by allowing them to issue special purpose revenue bonds, and there has to be a public purpose for what they're trying to do. And there is a constitutional amendment on the ballot this year that everyone in the public will be allowed to vote on, that basically says expands the current allowance for agricultural projects to be able to be used, access special purpose revenue bonds, to broaden. Right now, I think the current constitution says that it has to be only those projects on important ag lands. So this broadens it to be any ag project could have access. So I mean, I'm supporting that constitutional amendment. I do believe it. You know, there's some misunderstanding about what special purpose revenue bonds are. They do, because the state designates that there's a public purpose, they do get special tax treatment for residents in the state who invest. They would be exempt from paying bond revenues, exempt from state and federal income taxes. So it's just one more way that we can support agricultural businesses in the state.
surprised that would require an amendment, actually.
Yes.
That seems kind of odd. Okay, so what did people think of that answer? Most people agree. Again, a heavy dose of undecided here, so maybe
Yes.
some more
Well,
education on the
yes,
issue.
and I do think that it is kind of complicated, and the handout that the League of Women Voters is circulating is you know, is not that clear about how to explain it. So.
Okay. Okay, moving on. Will you engage retirees from the executive branch as a stakeholder group to gather their thoughts and expertise in initiatives and changes? It's like somebody had a specific idea in mind here.
Well, you know, I definitely would be looking to engage everybody in terms of getting ideas for changes or improvements. You know, obviously retirees would have first-hand experience, and that their input would definitely be welcome. But, you know, I would certainly invite you, Chenoa, and all of your friends to get engaged as well. I think it's just important to engage the community in seeking solutions and trying to find ways that state can be more efficient and more effective in everything that we do.
Right. I mean, there's something to be said for people that have been through it a little bit before, right?
Yes.
And they know what to expect. Okay. Looks like most people agree strongly with that opinion. Okay. We need to value our folks that have the experience. How transparent will your administration be? Oh, that's a loaded
Well,
one.
you know, for all of my 29 years in the legislature, I've been an advocate for transparency. You know, I was, as an electrical engineer, very interested in promoting the use of technology to improve transparency. So I've been very engaged from the very beginning about changing all the rules to increase transparency. You know, the gridlock that occurs in the Congress cannot occur at the state legislature because we used to have those kinds of arcane rules, but most all of those have been changed so that if there are a majority of members on committees or a majority of members in the House or the Senate, there are ways to ensure that public hearings are heard, and then it really is about majority vote driving the issues and bills that are heard. So I would definitely look to bring that emphasis to the executive government. You know, the website, the state capitol website has won national awards and recognition for its ability to provide information to the public, and then most importantly about engaging the public and asking them to be participants. So, you know, the executive branch is a lot bigger, and so I'm not exactly certain what that looks like, but we definitely would be looking at ways to provide more transparency, to use technology to do a better job of engaging the public in the dialogue. So.
Right. Interesting. Looks like maybe the Hawaii State Legislature could teach Congress a thing or two.
Oh, actually,
about
you know,
process.
that's one of those things that I definitely would look at the team that built that site and see how we could get them to build something for the executive branch. Because I think a lot of the functions, you know, if you look at boards and commissions, and I don't know if you sit on some, but
Try to avoid that. Yeah.
Okay. For those who sit on boards and commissions, you know, there's not like a one-stop shop about where to get information, agendas, a testimony, all of those kinds of things are spread throughout the government website.
Right.
So.
Still a lot of efficiency to be had.
Yes,
Yeah.
there would be.
Yeah. Well, the use of LiveSift obviously is transparency at its finest, so we can continue to employ that tool. Looks like everybody agreed with that answer strongly. Okay. Agricultural infrastructure is vital to developing Hawaii's food industry and developing new jobs. How can the state lead in this effort?
Well, you know, as I've traveled around the state, I've met with many farmers, and definitely there are lots of different concerns. So we have talked a lot about sustainability over the last several years, and I'm just concerned that there really isn't a specific plan. So it really is about trying to work, and part of what we've talked about just in terms of process is really to work with the existing farmers who are producing food for consumption, and just start with the question of, okay, so what would it take for you to be able to, let's say, double production over the next several years? and what are those projects, and then really look at all the farmers on every island and see if we can identify which things would be priorities for that island, you know, and then really roll that up and try and do some kind of process to prioritize the project. So really the objective would be to expand the growing more of the food we eat, and to me it really does start with the farmers and having them identify the things that are roadblocks to having them expand, or you know, the kind of infrastructure that they need. So which area, you know, we do spend, like in the last budget, we authorized about $24 million in water infrastructure all across the state. You know, because there's no prioritization now, is that the best 24 million we could spend or not? It's really hard to get a read. So it's really about working with the farmers and getting them engaged about trying to identify the priority projects.
Yeah. Interestingly, a few people disagree. What do you think they're taking issue with here?
Well, you know, it could be that they just maybe they don't believe there should be any state investment. You know, I do, you know, it is kind of, yeah, I do believe that there needs to be some assistance, but agriculture has to get to the point of it being self-supporting over the long run, or else, you know, we cannot continue to subsidize forever. But it's really trying to develop plans that will assure that we can provide assistance initially and get to that point where it is sustainable.
It does seem like, since we have the capability to feed ourselves, we should be working on that.
Yes.
So that
well,
we
you
can
know,
get
and people
there
tell
from
me,
here.
and I spoke at the Ahamoku conference on statewide conference on Maui, and it really was about how we can move back to traditional resource management. You know, they say that at the height, the native population in Hawaii was more than 1 million people, and it was totally sustainable because there was no barges and ships bringing in.
Right.
So at one point in time, you know, we did grow everything that we ate, and it's getting back to those traditional practices.
Right. Great. Okay. Next question. How would you pull together all segments of our community to formulate a plan for Hawaii's economic future?
Well, you know, that is something that I think about a lot, because I really think it's important that we do it. You know, the state functional plans, which is supposed to be the roadmap for economic change in Hawaii, was adopted more than 60 years ago. And it hasn't really been updated since. I mean, we've done tweaking here or there. And that plan was really staking out the roadmap to move from agriculture, sugar and pineapple being the prime economic drivers, to the visitor industry. And so we have been following that roadmap for 60 years. And I would say that we've done a pretty good job.
We've done a great job. That's
you know, the visitor industry is now the number one industry, $14 billion, 175,000 jobs. So the challenge and the question is, so what is the next 150 years? And I think that that's the conversation we need to have. So the state functional plans had statewide hearings all across the communities. It's really about engaging the public to talk about what is the next big thing, or how do we structure, how do we create. I mean, you and I know that it's virtually impossible to pick through any kind of community process about what the next big thing will be. So what changes are required to create an environment that supports entrepreneurs and innovation? We know, and you know, as you work at accelerators, right? I mean, it's those companies, the startups that will drive the job creation in the future. So what does that mean from the state perspective? What can the state do to support accelerators? How do we create a community process that will talk about these changes so we can get it into the state plan, which then drives the budget and allow us to grow the economy, just like we did for the last 60 years in terms of visitor industry.
And so would you have these statewide hearings again? What do you think?
I think that's part of it. It's really trying to have hearings. It's, you know, my guess would be you would have to kind of have a summit to at least try and identify what the the big ideas might be, and what the specifics of a plan that would support that. You know, it's kind of like, how do we best support the tenants in your accelerator? You know, they all have different needs. What kind of state support is needed? So I think that becomes, you know, when we decided to move from agriculture to visitor industry, we didn't know exactly what that meant at that point in time, but we did provide direction. So the question is, how do you characterize the next economic engine, and how would we define it, and what would be the role of the state to grow it?
Right,
So-
right. How do we provide that
Right.
support? And that's great. So looking at the results of that, interesting, pretty well split around agree, strongly agree, and a little bit of disagree, and some heavy dose of undecided. Interesting there. Okay. So next question. Let's see. What do you plan to do to ensure that we get high-speed broadband? We were just talking about this, to support Hawaii's tech industry.
Well, Chenoa, as you know, we do have a couple things that we need to get very active about. First is that the first Trans-Pacific fibers that have been placed are getting to the end of their useful life, and so really the state needs to be aggressive. Governor needs to be very active in ensuring that we do land or get the Trans-Pacific fiber projects to see value in stopping in Hawaii, so that we get capacity. I know that when we had the briefing from the Department of Defense, they really say that it's in the next decade that that we would get to the end of the useful life of the existing cables. So we definitely need short order. This past session, we actually appropriated funds to the university so that they could be an active buyer of capacity in the next Trans-Pacific fiber. You know, we did that almost 20 years ago the first time, and it allowed us and allowed the state to really get aggressive with the Southern Cross project, and cause them to land. So we're hoping that the university could be a carrot to at least engage in communications with the cable consortiums to make sure that they were aware that the university. You know, the other thing that I sat and served on the broadband task force the first time, and the thing that came up a lot was the fact that our environmental laws do take a long time for any project that is trying to do work on the landing, and as you know, those consortiums kind of get put together really, and then it's once they decide they're going, they need to really make decisions much quicker than our environmental laws will allow. So one of the notions of that was really maybe the state should pre-fund cable landing and go through all of the approvals and get the project approved, so that when the project comes through, they can act quickly and get it built within that time frame. So I think that that's the other idea. I think that has a lot of value.
I like that idea. Strongly agree. Do I get to vote? All right. Yeah, I do think broadband is critical, and we used to have a big advantage in that. And as you say, it's eroding now, and we don't want to get bypassed, and that's really very critical to our future.
Right. And what we learned the last 2 years ago or 3 years ago when we had the hearings is clearly, if we want to continue significant federal investment in the state of Hawaii, they're only going to come if they can get broadband, because if they lose connectivity, then Hawaii's not a great place to be.
Yeah, and it's not going to be a great place to develop new technology either if we don't have that. Okay, next question. If leadership is essential to your administration, will Hawaii Leadership Academy be reinstated? What is that?
Okay, so I don't know what the Hawaii Leadership Academy is, but I do believe that leadership is important, and if I am fortunate enough to be elected on November 4th, it really is about some assembling leaders to lead the agencies. I'm be looking for people that are collaborators and people that believe in community engagement. I think it's very important that we do that. And if this is some kind of program that was to help develop leadership in state government, and clearly that's something I think that would be valuable.
Yeah, well, we don't know what it is, but it sounds great, doesn't it? Okay.
Well, it's one of those, if you send us an email that kind of explains what it is, and
Right.
then we can kind of follow up.
And our results are all over the map because I think nobody really knows what we're talking about. That's
Okay.
All right, next one. Senator Ige, you said living within the states means, does that mean you would support a bill putting a lock on the rail budget? Uh-oh, rail.
Well, the rail budget is, rail project is a project of the city and county of Honolulu. So the state's involvement with the rail project is really non-existent at this point, other than the typical permit approvals or those kinds of things that would be. I mean, the state is the regulator, and for example, historic sites and all of that, we're involved, but we're not involved with the budgeting or anything like that. I would say, and it's come up before, is the notion of the excise tax and for rail and extending it, and that would be the only involvement that the state would have if there was a need to extend that tax authorization beyond. I believe the current tax expires in 2023 or something like that.
I don't know. But
So
do you think you would be in favor of extending that?
well, I think that really at this point in time we need to see where it is. You know, 2023 is such a long way away that
Right.
we ought to see where we're at. Yeah, I believe that the HART project should do everything that it can to stay within budget. They need to look at ways to be more efficient. I do know when we had the first round of discussions on transit, the notion of public-private partnerships about being able to seek private investment in the transit stations were part of the original conversation, and then it all fell out as they started to construct the rail station. So I think that you know, if you visit, and I visited transit projects across the country and around the world, you know, there are lots of commercial activity in transit stations, and that would be an opportunity to seek private investment.
Right. Well, I know that the city and county is still working on that, I believe, right?
Yes.
I know my friend Peter Tomazawa, it's one of his charges in life is to find some commercial interest in those stations. So hopefully that will work out. It's like everybody agrees quite a bit with you on that one. All right, next question. Let's see. What do you plan to do to ensure that we get high-speed broadband? Didn't we already ask that?
Yeah.
All right, next question. Yes, we love broadband, but let's get to the next question. All right. Instead of raising taxes, how do you propose to raise revenue in our state?
Okay, and that's something actually I thought a lot about. You know, I've been a big supporter of investing in the IT infrastructure in the state.
Right.
And our tax collection system is so antiquated. You know, and it's one of those that it prevents us from collecting a lot of taxes that are currently old under existing law. So I do believe that, and we've already appropriated funds for that project, so it's really about implementing. And I would certainly advocate that we implement as soon as possible. And in fact, I would probably have structured the contract to actually provide a bonus and incentive for them to complete earlier.
Right.
And I do believe that if we had a modern tax collection system that would allow us to cross-reference when you filed your business registration, that to make sure that we're getting a general excise tax and all of that.
Well, not me, but yeah, the next guy.
But I think that if we had a modern tax collection system, that would allow us to run data analytics on personal and business corporate income taxes, trying to identify those that are not consistent with what you would expect.
So what do you think is required to kind of update that system? What does that look like?
Well, we appropriated about $64 million over 2 years. So I think that is, you know, over the last 4 years, we've appropriated more than $220 million for enterprise resource management system, so budgeting, financial management, personnel, and then the tax system, which I think is the two core systems that the state is so far behind. Chenoa, the systems are so old that we can't, it's not manufacturer supported anymore, so we buy spare parts on eBay. Because we're in the aftermarket, you know, so I think that's long overdue.
That's sad. So
I do believe that if we had a modern system, we would collect hundreds of millions more.
That's what I was going to ask you, right? So you could easily pay for that 64 million and then some. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, great.
Most definitely.
Okay. It's like most folks agree with you on that one. We need to get out of the dark ages here technologically. Oh, interesting question. Where do your children go to school? Oh.
Okay, so I have 3 children. Lauren, my oldest, is now 24. My middle daughter, Amy, is 22, and my son is 19, Matthew. They all started at Pearl Ridge Elementary School, so it was a great opportunity. They did a great job. My oldest daughter, Lauren, started at Iolani in the 7th grade. My middle daughter, Amy, went to Moanaloa Middle School and Moanaloa, and then she moved to Punahou in 9th grade. And my son, Matthew, started at Punahou in 7th grade. And people have asked me why, and it's about trying to find opportunities. My kids, or we were definitely interested in having them learn a foreign language, and not all of the public schools have foreign language, and performing arts.
And the arts and music.
So it was about trying to identify opportunities that would give them, you know, the opportunities that they wanted.
Yeah, I think these are tough questions for every parent
Absolutely.
in Hawaii. Definitely, we all struggle with that. Looks like most people agree, I guess, with your school choices. I don't know, or at least how brilliant your children are to have gotten into those schools. I'm not sure what we're agreeing with here. But
well, you know, and they, Pearl Ridge Elementary is one of the best public schools in the state. The faculty and staff there are so committed to the children, and you know, it is one of those things that I think that we don't promote the fact that many of our public schools do a really good job on lots of different programs. Yeah,
I think that's absolutely true, especially the elementary level. What we need to work on more and more so is the upper levels, right, secondary and on up. Okay, would your administration move to implement single-payer health care?
Well, so it's one of those things that I think that you know, the legislature did pass legislation to create the Hawaii Health Authority, whose job really was to try to see how we can get from where we are today in terms of health insurance to try and merge and move to kind of a single payer where all of the Medicaid, Medicare, and the Hawaii prepaid health were kind of all connected and in a single payer system. So, you know, that's something that I believe in concept, and I think the devil is in the details about how to get from where we are today and how the businesses are organized and how insurance is organized, and then healthcare is provided to where we might want to be, which is you know, a single payer system where the reimbursements are uniform and everybody participates. So I think the challenge is how to get from where we're at today to, you know, where we might want to be, which is that single payer. And hopefully, you know, we can get reactivated on the Hawaii Health Authority, and we can get back to what steps we would have to take to get from where we're at today to where we might want to be.
Right. I mean, Hawaii's always been so out ahead with regards to this healthcare issue. So we should be able to figure it out, if anybody.
If anybody, we should. And you know, our community benefits from being very first with healthcare by having the longest life expectancy in the country, having lower health insurance costs than any other jurisdiction, and having the lowest per capita Medicare costs in the country. So, you know, I do think universal service, universal health care works. and Hawaii is kind of the leader in providing that.
Right. I think what's interesting about that too is our lead in healthcare also has attracted a lot of healthcare IT companies, and I think we can attract more because we're so unique in that regard.
Well, definitely want to meet and talk with you more about that. You know, when it gets to business attraction, I'm definitely interested.
Well, I think that's a good sector for us potentially. Okay, I think this next question will be our last question.
Oh, okay.
And
wow, the time really flies.
Yeah. So the question is, what are the top 3 essential competencies you'd seek in selecting a department head for your cabinet?
Well, clearly, we are interested in getting the most qualified people we can. I am very much aware that the public sector salaries are lower than the private sector, and that'll be the biggest challenge. So it starts with people who share the core principles that I've taken into public service. So it's really believing in open and honest communication. The whole transparency issue is very important to me. People who are respectful and willing to listen to all views. So I am really looking for people who would want community input and community involvement, because I think it's very important for government. And then it's really about what I say is doing the right thing the right way. So it's really finding the solutions that best serve the public, and then follow all the rules, ensure that we are going through the public hearing processes and the community engagement, and then really, but moving forward, because gridlock really doesn't help our community in any way. So I mean, I think that that's kind of the way that I would look at it. You know, clearly, you know, I started the campaign saying that I'm not promising any jobs to anyone for any reason, and we haven't. I haven't spent any time looking for any cabinet members, but you know, that's if we are successful on November 4th, then that process of identifying people who want to serve in the public would start soon after.
Yeah, well, I think most people strongly agree with that, and we were just talking about how critical those cabinet positions are.
Yes.
So important choices to make. Okay, so now we are going to change it up a bit.
Oh, okay.
Now it's David's turn to ask you some questions. So he's going to do that, and you can respond, again, using the live SIFT system. So if you're not logged on, or you've logged out, log back on. And again, the participant code, David Ige Live, all one word, and you can answer David's questions. David?
Yes, you know, we did think after 2 weeks ago when we started this, we thought, okay, how can we use it so that I can benefit rather than just getting evaluated on every answer. And so we thought we'd ask the question. So the first question that I wanted to ask was, what factors do you think are most important in developing technology or high tech as an economic engine in Hawaii? And the 4 things that we identified as possible responses, you know, create more opportunities for startup accelerators, to attract more venture capital investment, or 3, lure a large tech company to Hawaii, or 4, push for higher speed broadband internet connectivity. So that's kind of the 4 options. I know that there's probably 1,000 other things, but you know, clearly, if you have a brainstorm and a bright idea, send an email and we'll look at it.
Okay. Well,
so let's see what's let's see how well it's really moving. Broadband kind of jumped up. Accelerators.
So let's talk about some of the how-tos here, David.
That would be great.
If we're going to, for example, really put an effort into broadband, how do we do that? What are the steps?
Well, you know, like I said, I think that because of the window of opportunity involved with these projects, they are moving so quickly. And I do know that that's even a challenge for landing cables in California now. You know, the rules and regulations and the studies required to any project landing on the coast the timelines are just so long that it becomes virtually impossible. So what the Broadband Task Force, 4 years ago, one of their big ideas was really to fund cable landing and have the state plan it and pay for it up front.
Right.
You know, the belief is that once a cable project decides that we could recoup the investment,
Right.
because we wouldn't want to be in the business of running the cable landing. But if we had done that, then that would allow us to have all the permits and all the approvals, you know, and we could actually construct it ourselves. We could pre-approve if we are smart enough about what the requirements are in terms of designing it, to have then the cable either build it or we would build it and then recover the cost.
Right.
So I think that that's a real important one. The other one, like I said earlier, was really to invest in and have the university have some funds so that they could be active participants if somebody is kind of running through, and if they were a participant on the cable, just like Southern Cross a while ago, that really was an added impetus for it landing in Hawaii. So.
And what about the accelerators? This is near and dear to my heart. Of course, I didn't write these answers.
Sure.
I didn't, but and the state has been very supportive of our program under a previous administration. So what would be
well, you know,
going forward?
I mean, you know, we did create the high growth initiative that the Hawaii Strategic Development Corporation has kind of advocating. You know, I created the Strategic Development Fund because I thought that it was a way to have state participation and to really attract and begin to attract venture capitalists to the state, and then the accelerator programs are just really the current way to help business development.
Right.
So I mean, it's really, I think, about funding the Strategic Development Corporation and trying to look for co-investments in accelerators in the state of Hawaii. So I think that that's the logical one. We have been working with a lot of the pension funds. As you know, pension funds are really investors in a lot of venture programs. So looking at and encouraging their risk capital portion of their portfolios to be really looking at accelerators and funds in the state of Hawaii.
That sounds good to me. Okay, let's move on to our next question so that we don't run out of time. So what's your next question for people, David?
So the second question that I wanted to get some feedback on was, what would contribute to immediate improvements in public K-12 education? So as for those of you who have heard me speak in coffee hours, public education really is a priority for me personally, and I wanted to get some feedback. And so the choices that we identified: provide more autonomy to schools, put more air conditioners in the classrooms, and you know, for those in the audience, it is super hot in this studio this Sunday.
So we can relate.
So we can definitely relate to hot classrooms. Third is more focus on science, technology, engineering, and math, referred to as STEM education. And then fourth option is to push for more transparency from the DOE. So I suppose in the administration. So let's see what the public or the people tuning in kind of view as what would provide most immediate improvement to the public schools.
It looks like more transparency right now is kind of winning the race.
Now, why is it that my thing is all messed up? So did I mess this?
I don't know, but here we have it right here on the screen. So more transparency from the DOE. Again, how to do that?
Well, you know, I do believe, and it's funny, and we've said it, and it's actually sad but funny. Our financial management system and our budgeting system is so old; they're manufactured discontinued, and the budget director used to come to the legislature and testify that he has more information about the finances of the state of Massachusetts than he has about the state of Hawaii, because our systems are antiquated. Most of the things are kind of off the system or manually kept track of. So putting in a modern financial management and budgeting system, I think, would provide lots of transparency and would allow us to get more transparency and for the Department of Education as well as all departments. So I do think that that's a good place to start. You know, I have been disappointed that the board has chosen to stop having board meetings on the neighbor islands, because I think that traveling to the communities and being able to interact directly with parents and teachers and constituencies on the neighbor island is very important. And I think that that would go a long way. And then, you know, if we can do this and bring the legislative interactiveness into the Board of Education, I think that that would be a great opportunity as well.
And what about STEM? What can we do about that? That's something near and dear to my heart, science, technology, engineering, and math.
Well, you know, I have been a big supporter of STEM as an electrical engineer. That is something that I've been very much involved with. So we have been, and we funded for the first time 2 years ago, kind of about $2.5 million to the university to kind of organize STEM activities in our public schools. So, you know, they're focused on supporting the robotics program, focused on supporting digital media and 3D animation and those kinds of programs. And then we've been looking at applied learning programs and projects. So projects that engage and use smart devices, iPads and smartphones to really begin to use the sensors and teach our kids to be able to become more tech savvy in those programs. And it all starts bottom-up programs, so really looking for teachers that are engaged and work with them to develop curriculum and projects that really begin to bring the applied learning. You know, I really, especially in the STEM area, I really believe that applied learning is important. Not everyone can relate to the traditional book learning and lectures, and I've always found that applied learning programs really allows students to get more engaged and more excited about the technology, and the teachers do a fabulous job.
There's so much opportunity for that right now with 3D printing and all these things that kids can get their hands on that are relatively inexpensive, but you learn a lot.
I was going to say, you know, and you know, 5 years ago that would have been a $250,000 device, you know, and now the technology has moved where it almost becomes something that you could have in virtually every school. And so I think that those kinds of things, you know, the whole maker movement and trying to give, you know, I'm always amazed at the 3D software now, you know, when we're growing up and we're all required to take mechanical drawing and trying to do these projections and everything to envision 3D, you know, and now you can get a free program and app to really just build 3D looks, and you know, you can do the whole 9 yards and rotate it and do a bunch of things that was hard to visualize before.
Very true. Okay, well, we're starting to wrap up here. Senator Ige, thank you for answering all of those questions, and thank you, our audience, for submitting questions and also answering David's questions, and for all your participation today. This concludes the question and answer portion of our program. So I understand that LiveSift, as one of their many magical features, has put together a word cloud of today's discussion, and this is a really fun way to see what came out of the questions. Is this based on the questions and discussion we had? The larger the word, the more often it was used in one of the participant questions. So we can take a look at this. Very interesting. Support Hawaii. We can make a haiku right here, I think. Support Hawaii's developing industry. Yay! But you can kind of see what was important today to people.
Well, I hope they can capture that and we can post it on our website. So at least it kind of captures the dialogue.
Yeah,
you know, this has been a real interesting experiment. The last 2 sessions on LiveSift, and you're really trying to engage and get feedback from the communities. It certainly is. You know, we are 9 days from Election Day, so this will probably be the last opportunity that we have to try this before Election Day. So hopefully we learned a lot.
I think we did. I did.
Yes.
Anyway. Okay, so the purpose of today's show, David Ige 2.0, our live statewide conversation is to connect the people to our candidate for governor and get to know David a little better, and I think we all did today. So again, please let us know how you enjoyed today's event on LiveSift. You can rate the show. You can also send comments in directly to connectup@davidige.org. And I think we're going to take a look at what people thought about the show today. Ooh, excellent. We're getting excellence, David. That's great. 75%.
Oh, that's great.
And
that's great feedback.
3.6 not to my liking. I'm sorry about those people that didn't like us today.
Well, you know, and you know, as we've campaigned, we do know, and I personally do enjoy going the old-fashioned coffee hours and getting out in community. In fact, I have another one right after this that I'm heading off to. And you know, and there is something about face-to-face conversations that is hard to
Can't be replaced.
Right,
That's
can't be
right.
replaced with the technology. But I'm glad that many of you thought that the interaction was worthwhile,
Yes.
and certainly something that we will kind of carry forward if we're successful on November 4th.
Right. Okay. And I need to tell you that in consultation with the Campaign Spending Commission, we would like to recommend that if you were hosting a gathering today, any expenses that you incurred should be reported to the Ige campaign as in-kind donations. You can download the in-kind donation form at davidige.org/connectup. Okay, our time is just about up. Before we hear closing remarks from Senator Ige, again, I want to thank everyone who participated. And I want to remind you, walk-in voting is open until November 1st. And of course, there's then the big day on November 4th. If you didn't get around to voting yet, please get out on November 4th and vote. And the site to go to for polling places is hawaii.gov/elections, and get out the vote. Any final thoughts, David?
Well, I just think that it is important that people exercise their right to vote. You know, democracy in the United States is really founded on the principle of government of the people, by the people, for the people, and really the access point really is about voting in electing the best representatives, and I think it's very important. And I just would want to ask people who experience this to really send us comments so that we can make improvements. You know, I would be interested in kind of moving forward with the technology and trying to see and what worked and what didn't work, and any suggestions that they might have in terms of how to improve the experience or get more out of the technology. I would very much want to hear from them.
Yeah, I think there are many ways to use it, and we'll keep the comment section open on LiveSift for a period of time, so feel free to continue to comment and rate the show. And I think that's it. Thank you very much, David, for participating. Thanks to everyone, and aloha.
Aloha.
Growing up with a steelworker father, a mother who was a nurse, and 5 brothers trying to make ends meet teaches you a lot about hard work and compromise. Graduating from the University of Hawaii, 35 years in the private sector, 3 decades in the House and Senate show commitment and dedication. Raising 3 children together teaches patience and love. These are qualities of a governor Hawaii can be proud of. Please vote for my husband, David Ige.